Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. You're watching Alaska Weather with us on the 7th of December. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. We have a lot of ways for you to get that information anytime you want. You can tune in your NOAA Weather Radio on Marine Band VHF or use a NOAA Weather Radio to listen to the broadcast. Call us on 1-800-472-0391. That is the Alaska Weather Information Line. You can find us online at weather.gov/Alaska. And once you click on that page, you'll be taken to your nearest weather forecast office in Alaska, whether that's Fairbanks, Juneau, or the Anchorage area. You can easily find general aviation information and high altitude information from our Alaska Aviation Weather Unit or the Center Weather Service Unit there up at the FAA. And of course, email me. If you can't find what you need, we'd love to be able to help you out, but got to send me an email. david.snider@noaa.gov is the easy way to find me and hopefully get the answers you need. Here's a look at the hazardous weather across Alaska. Right now, we are still keeping southeast out of the big stuff with one exception, and that is a flood advisory for Yakutat. Several more inches of rain will fall in the next day or so, and a flood advisory for the Sitkuk River is still expected to kind of be an issue. What that means is there's enough rain flowing through that river to bring that up to kind of a minor flood stage and some noticeable action around the Yakutat area. So just keep that in mind around Yakutat, but the amount of rain probably not a huge surprise to you. Across most of South Central and the Copper River Valley, the Matanuska and the Susitna Valley, the western Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Anchorage Bowl, all the way up through Palmer and Wasilla, we have slick conditions out there. It is rain falling on cold surfaces, and we call that freezing rain. That liquid falling through the lower part of the atmosphere freezes on contact and makes a very slick commute home, or perhaps walk on the sidewalk, or just a mess, you know, and the kind of not good stuff on your car. And as we go further northward, we're looking at snow across parts of the eastern Alaska Range and into parts of the upper Yukon Valley, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But as far as the winter weather advisories go for South Central, we're expecting that this trend could continue at least until about 10 o'clock tonight. And of course, that is going to really keep things pretty slick out there. So maybe some recovery tomorrow. But for the immediate future, for the rest of the evening, slick travel conditions all the way up until about Talkeetna. And then north of Talkeetna, we expect to add in 2 to 5 inches of snow, in some cases as much as 10 inches of snow, but a lot of that is going to be north and west of the Parks Highway, so shouldn't necessarily impact most drivers there, north and or south and east of Talkeetna, I should say. So watch for that, and in some places it could be even as much as 10 inches of snow there, but generally north and west of Talkeetna is where that's going to fall. Now let's go a little bit further northward as we get into the upper Yukon Valley, the southeastern slopes of the Brooks Range, and out toward Bettles and the upper Koyukuk Valley. Expecting these regions to pick up several inches of snow, probably about 4 to 7 in general as we go through tonight and into your Friday. And then the red areas, that's even worse. Blizzard warnings are now in effect for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea. We're expecting about 2 to 4 inches of snow there on top of gusts to 45, even 50 miles per hour, lowering visibility. So it's not just the snow, it is the wind back for the Beaufort Sea coast. So a lot going on, mainly in the eastern half of Alaska as we head through tonight. So here's what we see. On the satellite picture, we're still dealing with that very broad and very elongated area of warm and wet air. That atmospheric river stretches thousands of miles to the south and is pointed pretty much due north, heading right into the northern Gulf Coast of Alaska. And you can see how it's just kind of grazing northern sections of southeast, and you can kind of see where it cuts off right around the Kenai Peninsula here, and then really kind of fringes out and dries out as that center of circulation is passing over Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula. All of this is moving northward, and over the last few days we've seen this precipitation edging northward up the Alcan border and now into the central and eastern Beaufort seacoast with a renewed chance of snow there. We do have a frontal boundary up north, and that is helping to squish the air that's traveling over that area and really have to make that move a little bit faster. So we're getting that lowered visibility with the snow now across parts of the north slope, and we're getting a tightening of the pressure gradient across the interior. So don't be surprised to see that wind blowing across the road at times as that moves through the region. Periods of heavy snow, my goodness, the places around Valdez have seen, up above Valdez that is, Thompson Pass has seen 76 inches of snow in about 5 days, and let's see if I remember right, about 46 inches of snow in about 48 hours, or about 2 days worth. And expecting another 2 feet of snow, maybe more, 2.5 feet of snow even, in the next 24 hours. So it's already one of the snowiest places on the planet, and it's just going to get a boatload more of that snow here just in the next 24 hours. So stay safe to the DOT crews and everybody that's supporting them there. I know you're trying to get that highway open. Here's a look at parts of the northern Gulf Coast. Periods of heavy rain expected there, and all that, again, stretching out toward Yakutat. Freezing rain for south central, and pockets of rain across southwest today. Another area of low pressure out across the west, dragging in a surge of colder air with it, and snow showers across the northern Yukon Delta, and blowing snow developing there across the central and eastern parts of the Seward Peninsula. As we get into tonight, warmer air will continue spreading northward. That's just going to keep the snow going across some parts of the interior, the Copper Basin. Rain across the Gulf Coast, spreading slowly into places like downtown Juneau, and warm around Sitka. Last couple of days has been pretty warm around Juneau for sure. Just a sign of that. You get some rain, that'll help cool things down a little bit. And then some rain for Kodiak Island as well as the Alaska Peninsula, with low pressure kind of sneaking its way into Bristol Bay. Out across the west, there's that one area of low pressure we were watching. Cold front kind of drops off of that picture there, with snow showers continuing for the chain, and snow and blowing snow across the north slope. That will continue as we head into Friday and wrap up the week. Rain and periods of even heavy rain possible across the capital city and parts of southeast tomorrow. Low pressure across the northern Gulf. No warnings out there for rain right now, with the exception of the flood advisory around Yakutat. Heavy snow may continue at elevation for parts of Thompson Pass down below. Snow is likely to continue for the Copper River Basin again, with winter weather advisories posted there. Looking for an improving weather situation around the Kenai Peninsula into Anchorage and the valleys, generally north of Talkeetna is where we'd expect a little bit more snow there, but not expecting anything more really than clouds around the road system for the Kenai, Anchorage, and into the valley there. So it should be an improvement over what we have right now. Areas of snow and blowing snow for the north slope, and snow showers continue for the central and western chain. By Saturday, low pressure is back in the western Gulf, and you see that the overall pattern really hasn't changed all that much. We're going to have coastal areas of rain, probably some wind with that through southeast, and likely some pockets of heavy rain with that as we go into Saturday. Look for areas of mountain snow. The overall snowfall in the Alaska range should start to trend downward just a little bit. The problem is, though, that there are several other waves in this pattern that are still working their way toward south central, and the overall upper air pattern hasn't changed very much. So we're going to get waves and waves and waves of the rain and the snow across the region. It's hard to say it's going to be in exactly the same place or not, but overall the trend of the weather picture for south central and parts of southeast won't change that much. And as you get up to the coastal plain, it looks like the snow will continue, and the wind is going to be a little bit tighter there across Kotzebue Sound and parts of the passes there. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass likely getting into some of the wind there. So we'll have to be mindful of watching for blizzard conditions or conditions that are approaching that level if you're traveling through that region there. Out across southwest, watch for snow showers all the way out toward St. Paul and the Pribilofs there. Look for the Bristol Bay region to get into a little bit of a rain and snow mix through Port Hayden all the way back towards Sandpoint. Kodiak Island looking at rainfall with a 988 low sitting across the western Gulf. And if you look out west, you just get the hint of the next weather system that's already starting to work into the North Pacific and will make a curve into the western Gulf. That's listed at 952 already by Saturday, 952. So again, a healthy storm, winds coming up sharply across the central and western chain as we get into Saturday, and certainly again on Sunday. So you want to be mindful of that. As we get into Friday morning, it has been warm in southeast. It's going to stay warm in southeast with lows back in the lower to mid 40s. Around Prince William Sound, mid to upper 30s there. South central in the lower to mid 20s overnight. So again, a not good situation there with the rainfall already on the road, so just be careful if you're driving around. 31 around Kodiak. Middle Tanana Valley temps back in the lower teens. 11 there in Fairbanks overnight. 20 around Eagle, colder for Northway. 0 around Arctic Village, again with snow falling in the region, and single-digit territory back for the Beaufort and Chukchi coasts. Kotzebue Sound temps back in the mid-teens. Upper teens around Norton Sound, 19 in Nome. St. Lawrence Island down to 26 overnight, 28 in St. Paul, and low 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, 33 in Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. Shemya down to 29, a high of 35 out there tomorrow. About the same there for St. Paul and St. George. South Central back in the mid to upper 30s, 40 in Kodiak. Upper 30s to about 40 degrees for the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay and False Pass included, mid to upper 40s for Southeast. And once again, not really a cool day for you at all. Slightly cooler westward where you get into that heavier rainfall, but even the capital city in the mid 40s there, considering rainfall there. We'll see how long that lasts. Lower 20s around Fairbanks, Talkeetna 32, 14 around Arctic Village, and up to about 10 around the Beaufort and Chukchi coast. Wainwright near 8 degrees. Kotzebue, you're looking at 22, Shiftsmurf about 25, Nome and Unalakleet in the mid to upper 20s, above freezing for St. Lawrence Island. As we get into the overnight temperatures on Saturday morning, you'll dip below that, 27 degrees. Bethel's looking at temps in the teens. Bristol Bay temps and into the Alaska Peninsula, 20s and 30s there, mid 30s for Kodiak Island. Low 40s to even the mid 40s around Ketchikan, Annette, and Sitka at 44 degrees. Middle Tanana Valley back in the teens, 4 in Fort Yukon, 7 in Ambler, or Bettles, I should say, 9 in Ambler, and south central temperatures back in the upper 20s to low 30s. Looks like Homer will be closer to 33. Once we get into the afternoon on Saturday, temperatures are still warm across south central. Look at this, upper 30s and lower 40s all the way down to Kodiak. That includes Anchorage, Palmer, and Wasilla. Talkeetna in the low 40s, it looks like. Mid to upper 40s for Mini and Southeast. Sitka and the outer coast closing in on 50 degrees. The Middle Tanana Valley, upper 20s, 16 in Fort Yukon, Ambler near 17, about the same there in Kotzebue. Into Russian Mission and many across the Yukon Delta, low to mid 20s for you. Unalakleet 23, above freezing in King Salmon. Dillingham might be just a hair cooler. Parts of the Alaska Peninsula will hold close to 40 degrees as you start the weekend.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather now. IFR conditions will linger across the upper Yukon Valley, the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range, and into the Beaufort Seacoast. Watch for IFR to start tomorrow morning along the north and western parts of the Alaska Range and into Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Valley, as well as the northern Gulf Coast and mainly offshore in the Gulf. Look for MVFR, though, up and down the inner channels and mainly along the outer coast up toward Yakutat. As we get into the afternoon, IFR conditions will push eastward once again with another wave of weather moving closer to southeast. MVFR covers up all of the inside passages, with IFR expected around Chilkoot and White Pass, around Yakutat, westward to just about Prince William Sound. MVFR for a large part of the interior, and IFR conditions across the Koyukuk, the Noatak and Kobuk valleys, and then out across the Beaufort Seacoast, and limited IFR across parts of the Kuskokwim Valley, with MVFR across most of southwest. That trend continues through Saturday. You'll notice IFR stretching up the Kuskokwim into the middle and upper Yukon valleys, the Beaufort Seacoast, all the way into the northern parts of the Chukchi Coast, and IFR continues across the northern parts of southeast and along the southern outer coast. MVFR elsewhere across southeast, with IFR conditions lingering around Prince William Sound to Shelikof Strait and along the eastern and southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. By Saturday afternoon, IFR is more widespread across the interior, with snow falling there across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys into the middle Yukon, the Kuskokwim Valley into the Bristol Bay region, Prince William Sound, and mainly along the higher terrain of southeast along Clarence Strait and also across the Lynn Canal and into Cross Sound, including Gustavus, and places out west along the next boundary moving into the western Bering Sea, with MVFR just about everywhere else. Let's take a look at your pass conditions in detail for your daytime tomorrow. Anaktuvik Pass for your Friday, looking to be IFR pretty much all day, all the way. Same goes for Adigan Pass. Lake Clark and Rail Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions lasting through the morning hours and maybe some improvement during the afternoon and early evening. Rainy Pass expected to hold at IFR in the morning with some improvement noted in the afternoon. Expect similar conditions around Windy Pass as well as start at IFR for your Friday. Isabel Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions there to start your day. MVFR to finish it off. Same goes for Mentasta Pass. Looks like there will be snow falling in the region, keeping ceilings and visibility down at times, so prepare for that. Tonita Pass expecting to hold at MVFR through most of your day. Portage Pass, we expect to see at least IFR throughout the day. And then maybe some transition toward MVFR closer to the pass itself. The further east you go, of course, you're going to get right back into IFR. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see a transition to IFR, and then that should linger as we get into Saturday. Freezing levels indicate that there's no really warm air aloft out across the Bering right now. The surface freezing line is holding between the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. So all of the warm air that's being injected into Alaska is happening along that strong southerly flow that's pushing freezing levels up to about 2,000 feet north of Eagle and approaching Old Crow in the western sections of the Yukon. And you can see levels there between 8,000 and 10,000 feet across southern parts of southeast. So there is a wealth of warm air that is gradually shifting eastward a little bit, but even the 2,000-foot freezing line is approaching the Gulf Coast Kenai Peninsula region. Icing potential then is also going up as far as its kind of base threat level there, anywhere from 8 to about 10,000 feet across the Alcan border into the northern Gulf. Below 2,000 feet, though, across the North Slope, and there is a decent amount of moisture there for that to happen. Below 4,000 to 8,000 feet across the west coast and across the middle and lower Yukon valleys included, Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula for icing threat tomorrow. Here's a jet stream, and the main weather maker that we're having right now is the same problem that California is having. We're just on different sides of this. California is stuck under this monster ridge across the western parts of North America. That is driving some very dry air across from the interior of the lower 48 and pushing that out to sea. For us, we've got the strong and predominant southerly flow that is punching moisture and warmth into the heart of Alaska and really nailing the Gulf Coast communities with precipitation, be it rain or snow at higher terrain levels. And notice that pronounced trough continues out to the west. We have another system lined up behind it. This is going to be a very slow system to leave Alaska, it looks like. So southerlies at 9,000 feet across the Gulf Coast, get used to that, 40 to 50 knots, 15 to 25 across the interior, and more of a northerly flow west of St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, and the Pribilof Islands, northerlies for the central and western chain as well. 3,000 feet, 30 to maybe 40 knots across many parts of the eastern Gulf, 50 knots closer to the coast. Southerlies for the interior, 15 to 20, and northerlies across the west coast communities at 3,000 feet. Turbulence is going to focus isolated severe across southeast below 6,000 feet. Watch for considerable moderate across the upper Yukon, the northwest, and most of southwestern Alaska tomorrow.
Taurus. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. The winter solstice happens in just a few weeks, and Taurus the Bull is making its appearance in the eastern sky shortly after sunset.
That's right, James. Taurus is easy to find when you go outside tonight. Plus, he has two very interesting star clusters to keep him company.
What are we talking about? Let's show you. Okay, we have our skies set up for 8 p.m. any night this week, facing east. Low on the horizon, you'll see the familiar stars of Orion the Hunter. The three stars forming his belt make him easy to find, and we can use these stars to find Taurus the Bull.
Start with the star closest to the horizon, then draw a line upward, and you'll run into a V-shaped pattern of stars. This marks the face of Taurus the Bull.
Taurus is one of the oldest constellations in astronomy, dating back to the early Bronze Age between 3300 to 2100 BC. Back in those days, the sun was in Taurus the Bull during the vernal equinox. This was so important agriculturally that several ancient cultures included Taurus the Bull in their mythologies.
In Babylonian mythology, the goddess Ishtar was infatuated with Gilgamesh. Now, Gilgamesh wasn't that interested in Ishtar, so she sent the bull of heaven to kill Gilgamesh. The nearby constellation of Orion the Hunter represents Gilgamesh in this legend.
In Greek mythology, Taurus represents Zeus when he transformed himself into a bull during his seduction of Europa, the Phoenician princess. In another Greek myth, Taurus represents Zeus's mistress Io when he transforms her into a heifer so that he could hide her from his wife Hera. And wait, there's more. In yet another Greek myth, Zeus transforms himself into Taurus the Bull to protect the 7 daughters of Atlas from the advances of Orion the Hunter.
Man, Zeus sounds like a busy guy.
I know, right? I'm tired just talking about him. The great thing about Taurus is that it has some interesting stars and 2 star clusters that are easy to find, even from a brightly lit city. First, let's outline the constellation in detail. Drawing a line through Orion's belt, westward we reach the V-shaped pattern marking Taurus's face. This is known as the Hyades star cluster.
The Hyades is one of the closest open star clusters to us, at an average distance of 153 light years. The brightest star in the Hyades is named Dehne, and it marks one of Taurus's eyes. The star may have a gas giant extrasolar planet, and that would make it the first extrasolar planet detected in an open cluster.
Taurus's other brighter eye is the star Aldebaran, and although it looks like it's part of the Hyades cluster, it isn't. It simply lies on the same line of sight as the Hyades. Aldebaran is a bright orange giant star approximately 65 light years from us. It's over 44 times as wide as our almost million-mile wide sun, and it's over 500 times as bright and takes an amazing 643 days to spin one time. Okay, let's draw the rest of Taurus. Take the star at the top of the V and draw a straight line upward toward the bright star Elnath, and you'll make one of his horns. Draw a line from Aldebaran, which marks the other side of the V, and take it all the way to the not-so-bright star named Tianguan. You'll make the other horn.
Tianguan, also known as Zeta Tauri, is an eclipsing binary star approximately 440 light years away. The stars that make up the binary are so close together that they can't be resolved through a telescope. However, after calculating the masses of the stars, we've figured out that the smaller star orbits the larger one every 133 days.
And lastly, we come to the Pleiades. They are an open star cluster just west of the Hyades. Legend has it that the Hyades were the half-sisters of the Pleiades. Current estimates have the Pleiades hosting between 500 to 1,000 stars, and they're all less than 100 million years old.
That's right, James. This cluster is so young that if you look at it even through a modest telescope, you can maybe still see the ionized gas and dust surrounding the stars.
It's a great sight to see when you remember to keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of your sea ice edge. You can always find this information anytime at weather.gov/anchorage/ice. The Beaufort Sea, of course, still covered up. You'll notice that the ice is pushing to the west. There's a couple places that are opening up. I'm not sure if we'd call it quite a polynya just yet, but as that ice is moving away from the Chukchi coast thanks to strong easterly winds, we are making some room for new ice to form, though, in that colder water. And you'll notice that slowly and surely, ice is filling into that large gaping hole in the Chukchi Sea. Ice is also expanding a little bit further westward across parts of Norton Sound, though we do have some reduction in that leading edge a little bit there, and also pushing a little bit further west out over Kotzebue Sound. This is the latest as of this afternoon. Here's a look at the weather now in southeast. As we head into tomorrow, south and easterly winds will be strengthening across the outer coast. Look for gales in many locations, 35 to 40 knots with 17 to 20-foot seas as those winds move in from the south and southeast. On the inside, 20 to 25 sustained with gusts to 35 in places like Stevens Passage. Look for 4 to 8-foot seas, higher seas as you move into the Clarence Strait. For Saturday, southeasterlies diminish just a little bit more across the outer coast. Still some higher seas out there, generally to the west and to the south. And across the inside passage, 15 to 35, the strongest winds still in the south with gusts upwards of 35 knots there from time to time. 3 to 7-foot seas are expected on the inside, and 13 to 14-foot seas across the outside on Saturday in southeast. For south central, north and easterly winds coming down Cook Inlet, 10 to 20. Look for 3 to 5-foot seas there. Higher seas and stronger winds outside of the Barrens with a southeasterly flow at 20 knots. Inside of Prince William Sound, easterlies at 15 with 3-foot seas, and 3-foot seas just outside of Prince William Sound, but a much stronger or much higher sea there as you move just around the coast there. 12-foot seas expected as you move just outside of Resurrection Bay. As you get into Saturday, look for a broad east and northeasterly flow. Remember, low pressure sitting here across the Gulf. And another low is forming well to the south. Broad northeasterlies across Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound running around 20 to 30 knots. Expecting 11 to 13 foot seas on the outside, 3 foot seas on the inside of Prince William Sound, and 5 to as high as 8 foot seas as you move south of Kenai to just outside of Kachemak Bay there in Homer. Here's a look at Bristol Bay now. You're looking at southeasterlies there at 15 knots with a 2 foot sea. East and northerlies wrapping around low pressure right about here on Friday. Easterlies inside of Chillicothe Strait, 20 knots with a 5 foot sea. And northwesterlies as you get north and west of Cold Bay with a 20 knot wind again as you get on Friday. More of a northeasterly flow there by Saturday. 12 foot seas are expected. A broad east and northeasterly flow again wrapping around low pressure in the western Gulf as we get through Saturday. 10 to 12 foot seas across the Pacific, 9 foot seas in the Chillicothe Strait region, and 6 to 12 foot seas across the Bering Sea. 25 to 30 knot winds are expected on Saturday. As we get into Friday, keep your eye out west. Northwesterly flow will be the predominant feature we see on Friday, anywhere from 20 to 35 knots in the entire region, 11 to 13 foot seas across the board. But watch out west. Here we go. The next wave of weather moves in just that quickly, and southeasterlies kick in from Kiska to Attu, and storm force winds come up from Kiska to Attu. There are 55 knots expected with 27 foot seas as that band of low pressure starts to move in very sharply. And you'll see that on the surface weather charts here in a minute or anytime online at weather.gov/Anchorage/TV. Across the central and eastern chain, north and westerlies moving across the region. You'll still see 13 to about 18 foot seas in the area, but generally 30 to 35 knot winds. Big difference than what you see way out west. And across the west coast, northerlies moving down 15 to 25 in all areas, 6 to 8 foot seas expected on Friday. On Saturday, a little bit of a change, some slight strengthening there, 20 to 30 knots with 6 to 11 foot seas, the highest around St. Paul and St. George. For the North Slope, Beaufort Seacoast looking at blizzard conditions again, north and easterly winds at 30 to 35, northeasterlies at 30 down the Chukchi Coast with periods of heavy freezing spray, 9 to 10 foot seas there. And looking at north and easterlies continuing on Saturday over the ice in some cases, and 7 to 10 foot seas in the open water. I'll look for easterlies across the Beaufort Sea, 20 to 15 knots the further east you go. Recapping tonight's weather, winter weather advisories for the Copper River Valley, for the Kenai Peninsula, the Anchorage Bowl, the Matanuska and Susitna Valleys, north and west of Talkeetna and west of the Parks Highway. Accumulating snow, with some areas seeing as much as 10 inches or so. A flood advisory around Yakutat, and winter weather advisories for the upper Yukon Valley, as well as the south and eastern slopes of the Brooks Range and the upper Koyukuk Valley. Those places there could be looking at about 4 to 7 blizzard warnings in effect for the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, 2 to 4 inches, and gusts anywhere from about 45 to 50 miles per hour. Snow and rain will be found across southern Alaska, with snow and blowing snow in the interior, and that should continue into Saturday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.